What's going on, guys? This is Kaisho, welcome back. So we are back with another video. So in this video, we're going to cover top 5 decks with most potential post DBJH or the upcoming deck build Justice Hunters that will be dropping very soon this late March in the OCG. And the theme of our video will be cupcakes, more dragons, and pops. So from those three words, we can already tell how the metagame will shape after the Justice Hunters, and also we are going to have a firm idea on which decks will be included in our video here from the release of new archetypes from the Justice Hunters. And also we are at the tail end of our Alliance Insight format because we are going to have a new set and also a new ban list this coming 3rd or 4th week of March. Either of the two, we will get a new format. So moving forward towards our top 5, we do have Dragontail Dragonmaid, so a mixture of those two dragon archetypes that capitalizes on each other's strengths and availability to start their plays, all together with Dragontail capitalizing on the Dragonmaid's one-card starters and Dragonmaid benefiting from the ceiling that Dragontail offers on the archetype. So moving on towards our sample deck list of this deck. So before we continue on our video, please take a grain of salt for this sample deck list because this is by no means the standard way of deck building these decks, and it is also not the most appropriate way to deck build, and these sample deck lists are only tailored towards my own understanding on how the deck functions and also the integration of my own deck building tendencies and also philosophies on making a deck now. So moving forward towards the strengths of this deck, it is Dragonmaid's new ally. It goes without saying Dragonmaid will definitely benefit from the usage of Dragontail on their deck, allowing them to increase their ceiling, offering more resiliency, and improving the explosiveness of Dragonmaid going first. And I do think that it really complements the Dragonmaid as a whole, piloting their dragon cards and also using the consistency of the Dragontail to make the deck more consistent, and also another level of ceiling for Dragontail. Not only Dragonmaid benefits from the newly introduced Dragontail, Dragontail will also be very much using their prowess for integrating the Dragonmaid with one-card starters from Chamber and Parlor, making them much more consistent, and also it adds the battle phase interactions of the Lorpar and Stern on the battle phase with the house popping effects, and with Shu having an Omni-Negate presence on your board is also a huge factor on making this deck viable enough in this meta. And also when you play Dragontail with Dragonmaid, you have a broader way of playing around Maxi, Charmis, and Fualos with the one-card starter for Chamber and Parlor getting into Little Night Pass or Seals Pass. You can mitigate the drawing threats that we currently have in this OCG. As we all know, Maxi Charmis cards are very much prevalent on everyone's main deck and side deck altogether. So I just think that if you play this deck, you are much more conservative on playing around those draw powers. But it also goes without saying that this deck has obvious weaknesses. It is not the best version of Dragontail. So even though, as you all know, I am a Dragonmaid devoted player, and I really do think that Dragonmaid is a functional deck and a really good deck on the hands of right pilot, and it also gained so much success from the support from Quarter Century Trinity Box recently, last December. But yeah, as much as Dragonmaid is a good deck and has shown results from bigger regions up to Southeast Asian regions, with I myself winning top 8 Campus League finish recently, I just think that this is not the best version of Dragontail. I am not going to sugarcoat it. I am not going to hyperbole things for this deck. It is not the best version of Dragontail because you suffer too much space for non-engines on the main deck when you incorporate the Dragonmaid monsters, and you also make your deck much more bricky in terms of playing those garnets for the Dragonmaid, and also can be very fragile against certain hand traps. So things like Nibiru and Lancea, which doesn't really threaten the Dragontail, it will be very, very harmful for this deck because Lancea can stop the lady's play of Dragonmaid, and also Nibiru can punish you if you extend too much on link climbing using the Dragonmaid monsters and prioritizing their line of play towards the early game of your play, and also with Dragontail, of course, still going to summon a 2 or 3, no? So I just think that you're going to be in a very discerning position against hand traps like Lancea and Nibiru, which the pure Dragontail doesn't really care too much. And moving on towards our top 4, we do have Dragontail Magistus. So another version of Dragontail, but this time it compromises the slots for Dragon monsters for the Dragontail in replacement for a new spellcaster variants of this deck, because Dragontail doesn't only functions with Dragon type monsters, it also plays the deck with spellcasters. So this is a dual type archetype that patronizes both dragons and spellcasters, but this time we are going to venture the exploration of playing the spellcaster support for the Dragontail in the form of Magistus. So moving on towards the top 4, we do have Dragontail Magistus. So one flaunting strength of this deck is it utilizes the spellcaster scalability of Dragontail. So not only it is good for dragon archetypes or dragon type decks, no, it is really scalable with spellcasters, and Magistus is inevitably one of the best engine that you could play in this Dragontail, and also top-notch recursion and recovery. So the Magistus offers a broad way of having recursion and recovery towards the assets of Dragontail and replenishing their resources, and it is also a promising mid-range deck. It is much more spacious than the usual Dragonmaid Dragontail, and you can have more rooms for non-engines like our deck list here. It is playing 3 Folas and 3 Purulia with 3 Veiler. So you have more rooms for hand traps on this deck. But also, Droll can be very devastating against this deck once you are not careful on playing through your strengths and adding without much thought process on playing around Droll. It can hurt you very bad. And also, certain floodgates can hit hard. So things like Rivalry, there can be only one, no, and stuff like the Skill Drain, Powering Stone, all of those stuff will be much more detrimental against the Dragontail Magistus. That's why I incorporated things like 3 Lightning Storm, 1 Duster, and 1 Red Reboot on the side deck to fare against those floodgate control decks that are very popular, no? From the recent trend of Eldritch, Runic, Labyrinth, and the rising popularity of the Regenesis, it goes without saying that we are going to face control decks from this point forward. Moving on towards our top 3 on our list, we do have K9. So K9 was just introduced yesterday in the OCG. It was announced by Yu-Gi-Oh! JP, and as we currently have, no, I don't have pictures of this K9 arcs. It is always including the Yu-Gi-Oh! JP trademark, so it's just very fresh out of the Konami's HQ. And K9 is the 3rd archetype that we have for Justice Hunters. And moving on towards the K9 introduction. So K9 strengths will be very much obvious with this deck posing a threat to be the Ryzel 2.0. It can be the Ryzel 2.0 with just how things are shaping with this deck. Bunch of 1-card starters, consistency fodders with 7 Tachyon, 7 Ascension, and a lot of things are very much similar with Ryzel, capitalizing on XYZ toolbox, but this time it is on rank 5 toolbox. And also K9 has a distinct and clear win conditions. Very clear, no? When you read the effects of K9, you capitalize on the ability to free summon these monsters when your opponent does have 2 or more hand cards. So it is adept going first, going second, as much as your opponent has hand cards. And also, when your opponent interacts with you with hand traps, you also get after effects from the monsters of K9. So I think the distinct quality and clear win conditions is a top-notch asset for K9, and also lots of room for potential. So from the first release of Ryzel, from the initial introduction, I think most people didn't really anticipated that Ryzel will be very powerful. But as much as the pilots and testers have innovated a decklist that functions really well, I think it just went snowball from that. The Ryzel plummeted rather recent into numbers and success from the release of crossover breakers, and I think it can be the same thing for K9. Right now, it is only third for our top 5 deck here, but I think if people will explore the K9 and innovate much more effective thought process on deck building, I think it will be very unstoppable. But also, the weaknesses of K9 is also glaring. It may suffer terribly when facing back row decks, so when your opponent decides to set those cards and doesn't really want to have hand size advantage over you, you can get punished from it because these are level 5s. You have no clear way of summoning these monsters if they don't have hand size on their hand, 2 or more, no? So yeah, you can struggle really bad against those back row decks, and you don't have innate back row removals or spot removals on this deck, so you may also suffer from those stuff. And boards can be pretty lackadaisical, no? Not really punishing, not really stupidly broken. So you just finish your board with minuscule interruptions. So it can be lackadaisical on some people that doesn't view those type of boards really strong in this modern game. Moving on towards our top 2, we do have Dragontail. So Dragontail, this will be the pure version of Dragontail, and this is what I think the best version of Dragontail. The pure version, not only it eliminates Garnets from the Dragonmaid and Magistus, it also offers much more simplistic way and linear way of dictating the tempo of the match and having more access to non-engines on the deck. And moving on towards the strengths of Dragontail, potentially, when I say potentially, it can be the next best mid-range deck in the game. So as we all know, mid-range decks are very much favorable in the OCG due to the space that they have on the main deck, enabling them to play more non-engines than their engines itself. So it can play multitudes of hand traps. As we can see on this deck list, it is playing 3 Purulia, Double Falls, Triple Veiler, and you have Magnamut, no, and the usual Ash Impermaxi. So I think those are 20-ish rooms for non-engine already. So it's really strong as a mid-range deck, and also plethora of supports may come in the near future. So if you are following Yu-Gi-Oh for quite some time already, you all know how these waifu decks are gaining tons and tons and tons of support, endless support from next and next sets, and it doesn't stop, to be honest. Sky Striker have gotten support last year, and probably they are getting more new support this year because they have a new anime coming up. So these waifu decks are just a loophole of bunch of direct and indirect supports in the future, and it doesn't stop, to be honest. And this will be probably the next most sustainable archetype that we have in the modern game, and also a staple deck, no? Both literal and nonsensical. I think being a staple deck, you have 20 rooms for non-engines, and lots of your space are for non-engines. And when I say staple deck, it is very adaptive on metagame environments where you can just tailor fit your hand trap lineup to fit in towards the narrative of the current best decks and also the shape of the metagame at the moment. But also, it has lesser ceiling than other mixed versions. So like I've said earlier, the Dragonmaid and Magistus offers a little bit higher scope of ceiling for the Dragontail, but when you play it pure, you have lesser ceiling than those with mixed variants, especially Dragonmaid, which is more explosive and much more dangerous going first. And also, being a waifu deck, it will be having waifu attacks. So also, if you're following Yu-Gi-Oh for quite some time already, you all know how these waifu archetypes have been incrementing value on their attribute for being a waifu archetype or deck, no? So I think you can expect it to be very expensive fresh out of the box. I think you're going to spend a lot of money on buying the core. So yeah, that's the bigger issue here. But for some people, it's not an issue. But for a majority of people in Asia and not really big spenders on the game, no, I think it's a huge issue for having a waifu tax for the Dragontail. But moving on towards the top 1 on our list, we do have Yami. Oh my goodness. When I first saw the Yami effects, I got PTSD from browsing the details of this archetype. It looks to be a better version of Sprite and a more consistent one, and the rooms for support for this deck is really phenomenal. It can be really game breaking. It can really warp the metagame, and it is possibly the best thing that we have in early 2025. Yami is just so good, and we are going to see why. So moving on towards the strengths of Yami, it can be the Sprite 2.0 with the deck having so many 1-card starters. You inevitably just want to increase the consistency of the deck, playing more extenders, and still having more rooms for non-engines. 15 hand traps, it goes without saying. It is really absurd. It can be the Sprite 2.0, capitalizing on those factors, and also consistency is unmatched, no? You have Fable, you have Sky Striker, especially Sky Striker, really phenomenal engine for this deck because you only need the link monsters from Sky Striker and you start your combos from Yami already, and things like Sacred Beast, Azamina, Finsmith, all of those stuff can complement the Yami as well. So lots of rooms for integration and innovation with multiple engines, and also might become a tier 0 deck with the correct support sooner than later. So that's the scary part about this deck. The potential is limitless for this Yami. I cannot really deny that. And you're playing advanced formats with my friends, and I am also seeing a lot of my friends playing Yami on simulator and remote duels, and I just think it is really absurd. Some Rizal players here in our community doesn't fare really well against Yami, and it speaks volume on how Yami can be the next big thing in the market and also in the game, no? It has to be one of the best decks that has a large potential to be a tier 0 moving forward. And also weaknesses, I think there's 1 or 2 weaknesses that we can take away from Yami. Nibiru is monstrous against the deck. You can get punished really bad with Nibiru once you extend towards your 5th summon and you don't establish negate. I think you are getting destroyed, annihilated, and demolished with Nibiru instantly. And also, lots of pilots are already testing out Yami, and they are spreading deck lists all over the X, Twitter, Facebook, and other social media platforms, no? And I do think that a lot of people already targets the Yami. So it has targets on its back already, even though it is not released. People are already making some assumptions and trying to counter the deck, even without the presence of the physical copy of the deck in our metagame, no? So it speaks volume on how the deck can be very powerful because people are already preparing too much knowledge for a deck that is not even released yet, no? So it can be expected that it has targets on its back already, even this early. So yeah, that sums up our top 5 decks with most potential. This post-deck build Justice Hunters format coming soon this March. So if you found this video informative and helpful, please consider subscribing. It definitely motivates me a lot to keep providing this content for you guys. So once again, thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Peace.